Hi guys, this is Michael. This is the Comic Book Syndicate. We just saw Star Wars.
Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, so I'm going to give my quick review before we dive in here. There was a spell cast over me, and there was many flaws, and I've been reading a lot of negative reviews, but overall, I walked out, I felt very satisfied. So there's a lot of little things that we can get into, but overall, I think as the ending of a trilogy and as the 9 parts of this movie series, I thought it was great. J.J. Abrams did a great job. I'm happy with a lot of things. There's a lot of little things that we can nitpick. But now I'm going to turn it over to you guys. We're going to start it off with our pal John Morgan, who we've been trying to get on the show for 12 years now. So making his debut appearance, John.
So where am I looking? I look right here, right?
No, right there. So John, me.
What do I do with my hand?
No,
That's a Will Ferrell joke.
No, okay. So we grew up on Star Wars. Both of us, we watched it a million times when we were younger. So what's your impression?
Well, I didn't see. I was telling you, I didn't see any of the previews. I kind of just ignored it. I wasn't super hyped to see it or anything. I was glad to go, but I kind of went in there with no preconceptions. And the whole time I was watching it, I kept waiting for that moment where I'd sort of, fall into the film. Like whenever I see a really great movie, I almost forget I'm watching a movie and the time just sort of disappears. Whereas in this movie, I kind of felt like checking my watch. I just felt like it was a decent movie, and if I had gone to see another movie that wasn't part of the main core of the Star Wars movies, I probably would have enjoyed it. But as a Star Wars movie, I don't know, I just couldn't really get into it. I didn't feel that there was a lot of palpable tension. Again, stormtroopers are dropping like flies, so they offer no real threat. And I just felt like there's a lot of convenient, I don't know if you call them plot holes, but whenever they needed something to happen, it just magically happened, whether it's bringing back a dead character or finding something that you need. And I didn't feel any tension or worry or anxiety or any of that.
I think this is one of those things where the more you pick it apart, the more I'm like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I agree with that. But okay, we'll get back to me in a minute. Jolie, what's your first impression?
So this is actually my second impression, because I had a first impression on Thursday, and I remember my first impression being just really excited, and I knew I was going to see it again today, and I couldn't wait, and then I watched it again, and it really just kind of fell apart. I went in going, okay, now that I get what the story is and I know what happens, I can really focus in on the acting and have a look at the scenes around me, and I did a lot of that, but the story wasn't there anymore, and that was kind of my problem for today, where I'm not as excited as I was. I'm not angry, and I certainly didn't hate it, but again, there was no suspense, and we'll probably talk about that a little more later. Yeah.
Becca.
So I've read this fan fiction already. And when I read it for free on archiveofourown.com, which is a fanfiction website, I was like, yeah, cool, satisfied, because it was free. And then this movie was not free. It cost a lot of money. And it had some great highs, and it had some not acceptable at all lows for me. I sat next to Jolie, and there was a couple times where I could not contain myself in my seat of the cringe of how things were unfolding. Of are we spoilering?
Yep.
I mean, it's
we can
Star Wars
wait.
review.
We'll save the spoilers for a little bit later.
Ray's parentage, and
I think I visibly saw you out of the corner of my eye,
go dive out of
just
your
almost
skin.
I begged myself the whole rest of that movie that it was a lie, and then it wasn't, and I went, oh, they really did that. They really decided to do that. They really decided to undermine every other part of what the rest of the movies meant to me, at least.
I was sitting next to her. I felt some life force leave her body.
Yeah.
I don't.
At that moment.
There were some great moments. Some moments that I'm gonna go see again. Star Wars. Duh. There were some super cool choreographed fight scenes. A lot of the small interactions with people in ships and the gang, Poe and Finn and Rey. Just their interactions and their family and their bonding was amazing and awesome, and I loved it. And then they flubbed it up with some big flubs.
I hear you.
I'm disappointed. I liked the movie. I had a good time watching it, and I'm disappointed. And the end, is bad.
Okay, we'll get back to you. We'll get back to the specifics in a minute. Jordan, you're even a bigger Star Wars fan than me. What's your first impression?
I think the series is like a snake eating its own tail by now.
Okay.
It's just everything has to be connected. Everybody has to be related.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just tell a fresh story. You have to incorporate everything we've seen before. You have to have callback after callback after callback after callback. You have to use old props. You have to use old characters. You have to bring in everything everybody liked about the original trilogy. You have to just kind of find ways to shoehorn that in wherever you can. The filmmaking is fantastic. You know, the cinematography, the editing, the score, the effects. Other than one kind of weird thing that took me right out of the movie. It's not really a spoiler that Leia's in the movie. The very first shot of her is the only one that looks fake in the entire movie. It's obviously that they put her head on a digital double or another person. But when you watch the rest of the movie, it's almost flawless. She's integrated flawlessly. I was like, why would you choose that shot to be the one that's kind of the hokey one in terms of the CG? But overall, I enjoyed it. Overall, it was fun, escapism, but there's really nowhere to go. Like, they've kind of spiraled themselves into a corner, and it's over now. So
well, I don't know when I'm supposed to chime in. But
Whenever.
one of the things is like it's just
It's a
interesting
long
listening to
fight.
them because all these phrases that are coming out are phrases that should never come out after a Star Wars movie. No, I didn't hate it. You know what I mean? Or like it
But
was
I
kind of
like
I kind of forgot that I have to do my taxes tomorrow. Like there should be so much more. I think for me the prequels don't exist in my mind. I'm like
I'm with you.
I only think of the first two movies, but like I love the pace of like Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. I love how there's a few different locales. It's not this mad rush from place to place to place. There's all this kind of calm storytelling and tension building, and I don't feel like this movie had any of those things. For a layman like me, like I'm not really looking at the cinematography or the editing that much. I'm just really looking at character development and the plot and whether or not I'm falling into the movie. And it's got great actors. Like I love all those actors. And I think they all did really good jobs. But maybe like your analogy, the snake is perfect because it's just, I mean, it's not only rehashing the same old things, but eventually that snake's going to devour itself. And I think this franchise has, because you have these movies and you have the in-between movies that they're doing and all these extra things. And I think it's just run its course, perhaps,
The thing is you talk about the pacing. This movie, the way it opens, which is never done before, in the middle of a scene with Kylo already like mowing down all these people, then it cuts to him finding the thing, and then it cuts to him flying. It's like it's almost like they had to make up for The Last Jedi by having another movie in the first 5 minutes to be like, okay, no, this is going to be the story now. And they establish that Palpatine is alive, even though, let's be clear, kids that saw The Force Awakens don't even know who Palpatine is.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's quite obvious what happened. They can deny it all they want. It's obvious what happened. J.J. Abrams had an idea, a rough idea of where things were going. Ryan Johnson came in and said, "Oh, your new bad guy. This. Everything he had set up. It was set up. Ryan Johnson knocked all those setups. He got rid of all those setups, and then J.J. Abrams is forced to retcon everything he can to try to bring the story back into a world that he imagined. But it doesn't.
Well, let's put it this way. Okay, let's just say that they didn't have to bring back Palpatine. Let's just say Snoke was the big bad. Okay, which is fine, even though I didn't really like him that much. So then,
but you never saw him develop properly.
Okay, no, I'm just saying. But
because you had the mystery of him in the first one.
Sure.
Oh, who is this guy? What's he about? And in the second one, he's in it for 5 minutes, killed, done.
I know.
Okay.
But let's just say they kept him and they built him up. That's fine. But then, I actually liked that Rey had no royal parentage. She's nobody. I like that because you watch the movie, you go, okay, well, is she Kenobi's daughter? Is she Han Solo's daughter? Is she Luke Skywalker? Is she Lando Calrissian? She's got to be related to somebody. And I'm like, no, I don't want her to be related to anybody.
that's what I was saying.
So,
so not like it's a universe.
Right, and there's only five. And then now they're
Yeah.
saying that this other black girl is Lando's daughter. It's like, Jesus.
I was wondering about that scene at the end. I'm like,
That's a spoiler. You can't say that.
Well, I think.
It's not really spoiler.
Was he
It's not
hitting
the
on
movie.
her, or was he getting
Yeah,
tied?
yeah,
Or
I
dad?
thought he
don't
was
think-
gonna pull out a Colt 45.
Well, let's find out.
You can't talk to anyone without hitting on them, right? Let's
But like, is it his daughter or is it his
Or
new
his
next girlfriend?
conquest.
Yeah.
No, but I just
Maybe.
got. But this is what I mean is, let's just say they develop Snoke. My question is, okay, so then what do they do for this movie? Like, as far as what's the big reveal? Does Rey have other
Well,
parents?
but that's like an alternate timeline.
Sure,
We never
no,
get
I'm
to
just-
see.
I
I'm
don't
just
even
saying-
think you needed to create this mastermind
Mhm.
like emperor because they've had that throughout all the series. I think you could have in Kylo Ren's storyline created that character in him instead of having these
Right.
cutscenes at the beginning where he's killing random whatever they were. You could have that story develop where he is. I mean, that's what he's becoming anyway. Is this sort of grand ruler?
Right.
Why does his character? And again, this would be a spoiler alert. But why does his character need to be redeemed? Or the way he is redeemed, you know what I mean?
Personally, I had no problem with the way that he was redeemed. I guess the big question is, did they need to introduce the Sith Empire with this hidden fleet of 1,000 Star Destroyers that can all destroy planets? So now we have 1,000 Death Stars.
Mm-hmm.
They're all loaded with people. Where were they hiding all this time? It's like we already have the First Order. Do we need this extra threat?
Yeah.
Probably
It's
not.
the final order.
Yeah, the Final Order.
I just recently showed my 7-year-old the original trilogy,
Sure.
so 4, 5, 6, and then we watched Force Awakens. And when they revealed the super weapon in Force Awakens, she turned to me, she's 7, she goes, "Another Death Star?" And I was like,
Exactly.
exactly.
That's what
like,
I
you know,
felt.
what do you...
Yeah.
To
So
be
they
fair,
can't have to keep trying to top themselves.
There was 2 Death Stars.
But Jedi was a disappointment too. Like they shouldn't have done it in Jedi either. And then in Phantom Menace they have the big donut. It's like, hey, blow up the donut now. It's like, why don't we just? That's why in Empire it's just 2 guys fighting, and it's people being chased. It's much lower stakes. Even in Solo, I just rewatched Solo. Guess what? The last third of Solo is fine. You have twists and turns, double dealings, right? At least they did something different. It's like the James Bond syndrome where the best movie is From Russia with Love and all it is 2 guys on a train. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, now in these movies when they blow up a planet, you're like,
Yeah.
all right.
It's almost like, remember like when the new movies came out and George Lucas was like, there was a cut of him, I think it was on that Red Letter Media, where he's like, there's literally not one part of the screen where something's not happening.
Yeah.
And it's just a mess of special effects.
Right.
I almost felt like this was going down this road where it was just overwhelming from scene to scene, from place to place. And I think that detracted from the rest of the movie.
That reminds me, because we always like to narc on the prequels, but the best scene in any of the prequels is the fight between Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul, where there's nothing and it's just lightsaber sound and it's 3 people.
Yeah.
And then the beams cut down and they're just standing in a room quietly looking at each other.
Yeah.
And like that's the only good part of those movies.
Yeah.
But like nothing's happening and it's perfect.
Yeah, it's really terrible for the new trilogy. Is that like if we're talking about stakes? I just want to get back to the point of the stakes being high. They introduce the stakes. The Force doesn't exist. The Force doesn't exist, and people are finding their way back to the Force, or the Force is finding its way back into people. And it echoes, I think, the point that you were making about Rey having no parentage or lineage of like note. It doesn't matter. The Force will find good people, and it will prevail. But also, like the dark side of the Force will also be there because Kylo Ren has been sitting on it. So they set it up in those 2, the good and the bad. They really just messed it up.
Rey, in this movie, if everything happened the exact same way and she wasn't Palpatine's granddaughter, it would have been so much more satisfying. And she could have just not been Palpatine's granddaughter. She could have been the culmination of the Force and the Jedi and goodness in people.
Yeah.
And she's nobody, but she's also everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then she could have fought Palpatine and destroyed him because he wanted her because
Or
she was
Snoke,
powerful.
or whoever,
anybody,
or Kylo.
I actually, there were some kids in the crowd that kind of went, oh, when they found out she was Palpatine's
That was
granddaughter.
I
weird.
know, yeah, that was.
You know what I mean? But
I know because it's kind of like, how many times can you? It's like you said, redo the same beats, right? And the thing is there's people like Half in the Bag and Red Letter Media. One of the guys in there, Richard Everett, is always like, well, the Star Wars universe is limited. There's only so much you can do. No, you can do anything. In The Mandalorian, it's Lone Wolf and Cub. It's a Western. You could do a detective story. You could do you could do just a drama, 2 people in a room, right?
Well, when you think about the first 2 movies, like Star Wars and Empire, it's a political drama. We used to always compare it to like stuff when we were getting to the Roman Empire,
right.
talking about republics. And even though it wasn't like, they didn't delve into huge detail, but I always loved that aspect of it. Whereas this has just been this is just simple good and evil now, right? There's none of that political drama.
I know what you're saying. Here's the thing: is there's a scene in this movie. Okay, our favorite scene in A New Hope is when all the generals or whatever are sitting on the Death Star, and they're all just talking, and Darth Vader walks in, and they're talking about the Force, but they're also talking about the Emperor has dissolved the Republic and blah blah blah. It's all politics, and they're just hinting at a greater, grander scope, but you never see it, and that's what's so cool, right? In this movie, they have a similar scene, but it's 1/10 as long, and it's instead of having these nice wide shots, it's all close-ups, and there's a couple good lines, but it's like they just do it for 2 seconds, and then they drop it, and they go to the next thing.
But they're only doing it as a callback. It really has nothing to do with. It's just to say, hey, remember that scene in A New Hope?
I know what you're saying, but even beyond just being that, it's like you're trying to do it, but you're not even doing it right. Just go back and watch Empire. The scene when after Luke gets the operation, and then Han is like, you didn't see us. Like they're just casually, everyone's just casually talking. The camera's over here, and they're talking just like we are, and they're playing off each other. And there's almost none of that in this movie.
No, well, but that's the thing. It's like constantly this conversation is just circling right back to the original trilogy. And it's like, why couldn't the last 3 films, especially this one, have just been their own thing? And I think of the 3 that have come out so far, this one was its own thing.
Maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it.
Well,
it just wasn't its own thing, like in a good way.
Let's put it this
I
way.
like a lot of it though.
Yeah, I liked it.
It wasn't like I hated the movie, but it's like anything, when you're talking about Star Wars, the standards just go up, right? Your expectations go up. That's why, the prequels are so awful, because Mike and I were talking before the movie, like, that was the best movie experience of my life, going to see that prequel, until we actually saw it.
Right.
Which one is that called again? So we saw that. Because I'd never been so excited to see a movie before.
Right.
So, eventually you have to let go of the old movies. I didn't care, we were talking about it on the phone, like, I didn't care that they, killed off Han, and I didn't need it to be the old movies, but I needed them to be as good as the old movies.
Right.
And I think the first 2 actually are pretty good.
I mean, Force Awakens and Last Jedi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is easily the weakest of the 3.
It's funny.
And it's just a kind of like a footnote on that. Just there's a lot of lazy storytelling. Like the spy. Like, what was his motivation? He was angry?
Well, he has a rivalry with Kylo Ren.
Eddie.
I didn't
If
mind
anything, that carried over from the last 2 films, and that's one of those things where I was like, yeah, keep that.
Yeah.
Because it's hilarious.
More, though.
Yeah.
I need more petty General Hux. Give me like super bitter. Like, I wish they didn't just do what they did with him. I wish they wouldn't be like, I'm just gonna do it to spite you, and I'm gonna I wish he didn't have to go over the rebellion. He didn't have to be not his character, but I wanted him to be ruthless in his hatred of Kylo Ren instead of just
kind of
a sissy.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? Is it's one thing to write a good story. It's another thing to do a sequel. It's another thing to do the 11th movie in a series, right? And I don't know if anyone on Earth could have done a better job than J.J. Abrams and the guy that wrote Batman vs. Superman. But anyway, let's not talk about him. Chris Terrio, I think. Anyway, yeah, Becca liked it.
I kind of disagree, because all you needed to do to make this a great movie was to slow the pace.
Okay.
And get more into...
I agree.
Like I said, it was almost like a Indiana Jones movie to me, in the sense of like...
Well, it's 2 different things. The pace was shit, the editing was crap.
But you could have taken out a lot of those other scenes and say, okay, if the story is basically a hunt for this thing, then let that part of the story develop, but it doesn't have to develop at the pace that it developed, and going from this world to that world to this character to that, it was too much. It really detracted from the rest of the story.
There's parts in the movie that they do slow down. Now, like when they're in, like, I know it's like super rushed to get to the place to get 3PO's memories, but when they're in there and like Rey's oiling up the droid, and like the droid comes back, and everyone's like just kind of standing around and waiting and talking. I really liked that.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that because it gave it a little bit of like breathing room.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go immediately outside and there's fire and explosions everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's go back inside.
Just to go to something I thought that worked really well in the movie was the Kylo Ren and Rey relationship and the way that they connect through the Force and the way that they can transfer. You know, they hinted at that in The Last Jedi.
Right.
So I thought, it's interesting that he did build on that,
Right.
their connection. And I thought,
1 point for Ryan Johnson. Go ahead.
yeah, and the way that it was shot and filmed, how we were constantly wiping between them,
Right.
very clever,
Mhm.
and paid off. Like it, in the end, all that built to something.
Sure.
And they ruined it at the end.
Well,
No.
I don't think they ruined it. How did they ruin it?
The kiss.
I thought that was great. Why didn't you like the kiss?
Why did they have to kiss?
Yeah, why do you have to kiss? Just because it's a girl and a guy? If it was two guys can't kiss.
Well, they
didn't.
did throw
Two
in the two
girls
girls
kissed.
kissing at the
Yeah,
end. So.
I saw
Okay,
the gays.
every kiss that happened was disappointing.
Yes.
And every kiss that didn't happen was extremely
You're gonna put
disappointing.
gays in space and they're not my gays in space? Excuse me. No.
Who
no.
should have kissed then? Or Poe and Finn?
Poe
Duh.
and
The
Finn.
ones with the two with the most actual sexual chemistry in the movie.
Poe and Finn, I don't see a lot of sexual tension
In the
between
first
them.
movie, Poe was like staring at Finn, like when you put the jacket
There
on,
are
he's like,
songs
"Looks
written
good
about
on
their
you."
love.
Yeah, there's much written on Reddit, and she knows
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
anyway.
but Finn has
Oh, sorry, whatever. I don't even know the
doesn't
difference.
Finn have a new girlfriend
Yeah,
every
yeah.
movie? Like the
Doesn't
first one it's
matter.
Rey, the second one it's
They live in
Rose.
space. Why
Rose.
choose one race?
This
Yeah,
one's
see?
another girl.
There was a lovely throuple at the end, and that's how I choose. That's my positive take on the end. Is Poe, Finn, and Rey end up together, and they have many Force-sensitive children, and they are in a nice space throuple.
Here's the thing.
They shouldn't have. I'm mad about the kiss.
I didn't mind the kiss, I just didn't like the disappearance after.
It was stupid. And I hated
I must have
You know,
closed my
I
eyes
didn't-
because I missed that the first time.
it.
Because
Just,
I was like, wait a second, where's he going? Oh my god, where's she going? What?
I don't know. Look, here's the thing: is that again, it's not. This is J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, whatever his name is. They did not have an easy task. But
No.
this is the second time I've seen it in 24 hours, and I think with what they had, other than rushing Palpatine in there and the Sith Empire, with what they had. They didn't rush it. They did a good job. I know that there's 6 edits of the film, and the character that they killed should have stayed dead. Do you agree? I don't want to spoil it, but when...
But we've already spoiled so
Okay,
much.
now we're going to start spoilers. When
There's
Rey...
a lot of spoilers in this.
Yeah,
already.
when Rey accidentally kills Chewie, of course I was upset.
Oh, yeah.
I had tears in my eyes, but I was like, oh, he's alive.
Yeah, the next scene.
Oh my god, that was
Yeah, yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
No, leave him dead, because that would have been great. It would have been a great way to turn
To
Rey
raise
to the
the
dark side.
stakes.
Right,
do you
raise
remember
the
what
stakes.
this scene reminds me of?
The chicken
You
out.
will not know this, but you will know this. The
Okay.
scene in Twilight where in
You'll know this.
Team
Oh.
Edward,
Team
go ahead.
where,
Go
the
on.
scene in the last Twilight where like what's his face gets killed or whatever, and in the books they all just like don't do anything about it, but in the movie they have like a big fight scene and people die and it's like
Yes.
really satisfying, and then you find out that
It's
didn't
a
happen at all.
vision.
It's just a
That
vision.
Yeah.
Bull.
That's what that
Wow.
reminded me of. Star Wars should remind you of
Yeah.
Twilight.
There was a lot of weird. Go into my hut on this planet and you will find Leia's lightsaber there.
Yeah.
And let's give you a little flashback of how it got. What
I know.
That was one of the worst for me because you look at the end of Jedi, right, and you get, Anakin and Obi-Wan, and they're kind of this vision. But now, like, I think Luke was like one step away from making eggs for her. He's catching the lightsaber, and then he's like, oh, just this. Let me stretch my back out, It's like,
Well, that was a not. Obviously, that was J.J. Abrams throwing shade at Ryan Johnson.
Of course.
Right? You don't. Oh, that's not how you treat a lightsaber. Oh,
Yes.
okay. It's a little joke.
Yep. But now here's the thing: is so he catches the lightsaber and he lifts the X-wing.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, what's the point of him being
And the
dead?
X-wing-
if he can still do everything he could do when he was
that's what I'm
alive.
The X-wing is fully functional after being underwater for like.
well, not to mention
years.
that other
I know.
ship that was stranded out in the desert for like 50
It's a
years.
movie,
It was fine.
It's space. The Force exists. Ships maybe just run better.
I guess okay. So Jolie, we both saw it twice in 24 hours. What is it that made you get sucked in that now has changed? Is it just that the plot?
It was just Star Wars. Star Wars! Title crawl. And then seeing all the old characters, and then the adventure that they were going on, and then just seeing Rey's story unfold. I even was like okay with the Palpatine thing, and now I'm really not okay with it. Like I feel like that ruined her character. Ugh. The thing that sucked me in was that it was a big. It was just full of stuff, and it was all new to my eyes. And then seeing it a second time, it was like the blinders had been lifted.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't quite understand. So he's old and decrepit in Jedi. He gets thrown down a reactor shaft.
He's dead.
I guess. And then he had a clone.
I
don't understand because his face is
like,
not messed up anymore.
No, so when Kylo walks in there to kind of figure out that like this is where the Sith have been hiding for decades. 2 decades? That they've all been hiding underground on this planet. You walk past like a tank with bodies that are generating.
There were other Snoke.
Cloning Snoke.
So and then
cloning who anyway?
And then Palpatine himself says you'll find there's a lot of cool things that come with being like on the dark side, which is I guess being able to transfer your Force energy into
but his hands were all messed up. And he couldn't walk around. He was like suspended. So I think they're trying to tell us that was the guy that went down the shaft.
I don't understand it.
Well, like you see, you kind of touched on it there too, where this idea of like is his life force now in this clone, but now were those other Siths actually there, the ones that were chanting?
That's
what
were
I'm
they?
sure
Because now apparently all the Siths ever in existence are in this one form. And then she summons all the Jedi
and they're
into
all
her.
shipbuilders. I mean,
Yeah.
Sith / shipbuilders.
Also, they say in Phantom Menace there's only ever 2 Siths at one time. In this arena, there's 700,000 of them all.
We don't know if they're actually there.
I think it was like how Rey could get all of the
Sure.
Jedi in her. I think all of the Sith that's ever been was in Palpatine, and he was just being dramatic in a Voldemort.
He's being extra.
Being very extra in a very, very reminiscent of Voldemort kind of way. Like, I need to be dramatic and use unnecessary amount of force to create a giant stadium full of people who love me.
Well,
Like, I feel that.
But I don't understand the ships because the ships have the same kind of laser that we saw. It's not the same kind of laser that was on the Death Star. It's the same kind of laser that they used in The Force Awakens.
Starkiller base,
Right?
Yeah.
So now you're like, okay, so these ships have been out there for 20 years, but they're using the same kind of technology. Who built the ships? Why are they buried in the sand?
Yeah.
All those little dudes that were, like, walking around helping out Palpatine, right? There was, like, masked, like,
that's
little
true.
gremlins.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention, like
They
you
did it.
see, this is the grand threat, right? All these Star Destroyers. So why does he need Ren? Why does he need anybody else? Just go launch your Star Destroyers, and you know what?
That's a good point.
Like because he didn't know he was gonna. His whole plan was to build these Star Destroyers, and then get Rey back there, I guess, and then to tell her as she's about to kill him that if you kill me, basically you become me. So then she has to think that part over again. Why didn't you just launch your Star Destroyers and blow everything up?
Yeah.
And everything would have been equal. You wouldn't. Nothing else would have changed for you.
It doesn't really. Yeah.
Like when he sucked out their life force, he was surprised by it. He didn't know that was going to happen. That wasn't part of his plan.
Yeah.
So he didn't need them there.
Well,
he
he
didn't
was
need them for
trying.
anything.
What he was gonna do was he needed to get Rey there so that he could transfer his own Force energy into her because she was his granddaughter. Spoilers.
I guess because. So then he must be the one that went down the shaft. Because otherwise, if he had a brand new
Maybe
clone,
he just wanted to be off that hook they had him on.
You know what?
Well, I think he was slowly dying. I think that was the point. Like his fingers were all decrepit and everything. And then he didn't realize that the Force bond between Kylo Ren and Rey was enough to heal him because they could both do that because they're both She-Ra and they heal the same to the Force. But like
new powers.
Yeah.
That's fine. I was fine with that. I was fine with her being able to heal the lizard.
Like when Superman pulls off his shield.
Yeah, this is the
It's
cellophane
It's nice
as
because it's almost as if
Star
it's
Wars.
something she discovered for herself that she could do with the Force.
Yeah, I thought it was cool that
Yeah.
she was like, oh, this is something that's purely good that I can do.
Well, see, this is another. Well, I guess I'm just really picking on it, but that's another big problem: is that death doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right.
So that thereby removes the dramatic tension. Because who cares if they die, or you got stabbed? You're better,
But-
or you die,
Well,
you come
You
back.
only do it once.
You
It
know.
used to be if you were a Jedi and you died, you came back as a ghost. Okay.
Yeah.
But then Han Solo, he comes back.
He was a memory.
He was.
He wasn't a Force ghost.
And
He
when
wasn't
couldn't they
glowing.
give him a little shave? Like, jeez.
Yeah, I know ghosts
He's a
have-
scruffy looking nerd
Yeah,
critter.
okay, that's true.
Okay, so let's just shift gears for a minute here. Let's just talk about.
What's most important is we need to talk about, not to cut you off, but before we get off of this, and I'm going to swear, so you might need to bleep it.
Sure.
But the most important part of this movie is we found out that Palpatine fucks.
Yeah.
Like we need to bring it. I'm sorry.
That's-
I need to talk
What's the
about
point
it.
of being an emperor if you can't fuck every now and then?
But, like-
Well, yeah. Who's the mother? Who are these two kids?
Yeah.
Where were they?
And why did he kill the so obviously he
And
must have
when
killed
can we
his daughter or
start
his
another
son.
trilogy
Right?
to
He killed-
explain his whole story?
But like,
Yeah, he killed his son.
He killed his
God.
son and daughter.
But
Or
his
no,
wife-
his wife, his son and his
No,
wife.
he hired an assassin to do it.
Well, they were bringing him back, but why? That's another kind of plot hole.
And
like,
again,
why aren't the
we're-
son? Why isn't the son invested in evil? Because
Yeah.
he was raised by
Get,
like
get into
Palpatine.
family business.
You
What's
know.
going on? Yeah.
he didn't want to be a politician anymore.
Yeah.
who
Well,
is his mom though? Who's
Well, we
who's
don't
she
know.
related to?
And that's what I'm afraid of. They're gonna pull another freaking episode 1 on us, and we're gonna get a whole backstory again, and it's gonna be off the
I'm
rails.
So let's-
excited.
this is part 9. They've said it's the end of the saga. Okay. Now, I just want everyone to give a quick summary of how they think they can go forward. Obviously, we have The Mandalorian, which a lot of people love. I think is okay. I don't know what they can do. I don't know what the solution is. But first of all, forget about the Skywalkers. Forget about relatives, sons, secret relations. To me, skip ahead a couple generations. Have a new group of people learning the ways of the Force, the way that, like, you know, the Kung Fu TV series, it's like, teach the secret thing no one knows about to a few people and develop it from there with a small conflict. With instead of a galactic empire, start it with like maybe you have a utopia with like a small group of people that are like almost like a terrorist group. Like we've got to defeat this tiny little rogue nation or this rogue planet. Forget about secret, you know, fleets of Star Destroyers where there's a million. Like just bring the scale back down. You know, people love Rogue One, and that was pretty small scale. It can be done. People are loving Mandalorian. That's small scale. I think that's the solution to it. What do you think they should do next?
I think the most, I really like all the actors in this movie. I think they all do a good job, despite the fact that I didn't love this movie. But I really like Poe. Like, I could see if they wanted to do more with his character and where he goes after this. I wouldn't want to see a different actor playing him and go into some backstory, though. I'd like, where does he go from here? I would be more interested in that than trying to keep it in, let this, like, this story be done. You know, rather than trying to bring it back and some new empire or whatever.
Right.
But you can, you know, go off with Poe, and you can do a lot more storytelling, I think, too, because he's such a good. I think he's a great character actor.
I
right?
think he's one of the best actors out right now.
Yeah.
So is Adam Driver.
Not to like, which one's Adam Driver?
Kylo
Yeah,
Ren,
he's great too. Like,
He's a
I
good
mean,
actor.
all of them I think did a really good job. So I mean, I would see if you wanted to go into smaller character-driven pieces, but that's not going to happen when you got Disney and billions of dollars
No.
at the helm, right? So
Do you have any ideas, Jolie?
You can do an intergalactic drama comedy, like Firefly did it, but you don't have to
Right.
jump all over the galaxy in 2 hours. Like build a character, like take Poe and follow him through the rest of his life. What does he do? Does he settle down on a planet? Does he run spice? Like what does he do? It doesn't have to be or like how do they deal with the small level threats that still dwell like amongst populations on other small planets? Because there's got to be other turmoil. There's got to be planets in the galaxy that are like f this like intergalactic battle stuff. We've got like a lot of drought.
But again, this goes back to another kind of story flaw, is that they destroy all these Star Destroyers, but the First Order is still kind of there. And then they're sort of like, well, all the other planets are rebelling. And somehow everybody got together and brought in 1 billion ships to this final battle. Why didn't that happen like
I thought
way
all the
back
ships were on that one planet. Now they're over Endor.
But that was
over other planets.
apparently like Lando Calrissian gathered all those ships, and I think it was like 2 hours.
Yeah,
From
exactly.
all over the galaxy. But if the regular people always had that power, then why wouldn't have that happened back in the Star Destroyer
and
days?
if they're
You know what I
suggesting
mean?
that the Force is awakening within all of these people who were taken to be stormtroopers, then what does that mean? Like, there's definitely still evil stormtroopers. There's still like people who will fight for the old Republic to
A whole movie about woke
return.
stormtroopers.
Yeah.
I can just see it coming.
Yeah.
They could bring Phasma back because she was
Yeah.
not here.
Yeah.
Well, that was another Ryan Johnson.
Yeah.
Like,
Out.
okay.
But
Okay.
like,
So Becca, what's the next step? What do you think? What can they
as
do?
much as I love the characters, like I love Rey, she's probably one of my favorite fictional things that's happened in the last 10 years for me. Like, she's on par with like Hermione as far as like super cool female characters of like importance to me personally. But I think we go to it either further away
Mm-hmm.
or like a longer time ago in a galaxy way further away, and we like the Force still exists, it's still the same universe, but we're in a different galaxy, it's a different political system.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're communists there, I don't know, like just completely different people,
Communist Force users.
Yeah.
right? Like maybe it's different, maybe it's the way that they do religion is different. Like,
Sure.
it doesn't need to be Sith versus Jedi. Like, the
Right.
Force exists, right? And Rey's like now one of the neutral order people, kind of. So like, well, let's explore that. Let's explore the galaxies or the universes where people use the Force and they use it balanced between the light and the dark, where there's no light and the dark wars, but there's other conflicts, right? Like, there's so much they could do, and like the extended universe stuff, there's so much stuff in there that's not Skywalkers. There's a lot that's Skywalkers. Because literally the Skywalkers just procreate, and half of them are super evil and the other half of them are super good. There's no like in-betweens. Like, none of the Skywalkers ever go and be like
Sure.
moisture farmers again. Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
happen. But like,
Or spice runners. They all gonna be the same thing, right? You're a spice runner. You're a whatever.
Moisture
It's
farmer.
always a
Yeah.
repeat.
Nerf herder.
So, like,
Nerf.
they could just do just new characters, completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Not anywhere near the Empire. No stormtroopers. No Darths. Let's just do something different with a really, really, really interesting, well thought out concept of the Force.
So Jordan, how are they gonna fix this franchise? What do they do next?
I think you could do. I have a couple ideas. I don't know what direction they want to go. I concur with everybody's idea of just we need to get away from the Skywalker saga. I think you could do a movie or a series based on the X-wing pilots. You could have Wedge Antilles. You could have that would, like an old World War II movie.
Right.
You know, you get really into just the dogfighting and the pilots and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of drama that you could have there. Or you could go way, way back, kind of piggybacking off your idea. You go way, way back to the ancient Jedi and the ancient Sith, and it's more like Roman times, and it's very primitive, and it's just about survival, but they're clinging to these, religions, and it could get a lot darker and a lot weirder that way. But yeah, this is played out. It's obviously played out.
You're right. The thing is if you're going to take cinematic influences, instead of being influenced by Star Wars movies, use the same influences that Lucas did, which is samurai films, Western films, World War II films. Run Silent, Run Deep, just about a submarine now, but it's a spaceship.
Right.
Do Casablanca, guy owns a bar, there's girls love it.
There's a big difference. So, like, George Lucas was interested in telling a story, right? I mean, this is now Disney. This is big budget. This is big filmmaking. It's not going to ever go small the way, basically, it sounds like that's what we're all talking, go small. But it's not going to do that. It has to sell toys.
But
it has to keep the franchise going.
How would you one-up? So you went Death Star, and then they went, no, it's a planet that's a Death Star. The whole planet's Death Star, okay. And then they're like, no, we got like a whole fleet of Star Destroyers with Death Star lasers on them.
Right.
What are you going to do next?
It's a whole fleet of planets.
Yeah, it's a whole planet Death Star.
Well,
and that was Mike and I, when we would have these conversations where we'd sit up at night just talking about cool things in Star Wars, like the way when you see Darth Vader's Star Destroyer and stuff like that. But again, they take something that's cool. It's like what they've done with Boba Fett character, right? Like this kind of character that was cool because of his mystique, and let's build a whole series around him now.
Yeah. So
now it's like the Star Destroyers were cool, but they were always sort of lurking in the background, and now they're like, well, now we have 1 million of them. It's,
Well, Boba Fett was one person, Now we find out the clone army is all Boba Fett,
Yeah.
right? And now there's the Mandalorian looks exactly the same except a different color, and it's like you take one little. Or how about how are we gonna trap Luke Skywalker? Oh, we'll freeze him in carbonite, and we'll test it on Han Solo. Now in Mandalorian, they've got a whole wall of people frozen, even though that was just because.
And you don't
that's what
even
was
need
there.
a giant carbon freezing chamber.
Yeah.
You can get a portable one in your ship.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I mean, it is the future.
But the point is that or how about this? It's like, okay, we have nothing to train with. Here, use this blaster helmet, and we'll use this little robot and attack the clones. All the kids train that way. Now they did the same mistake in this one. Everyone's got a blaster helmet and a little thing, even though it was just because that was what was available on the ship, right?
Yeah.
So you're taking all these spontaneous, cool ideas that are just of the moment, and they're just duplicating and duplicating and duplicating, right? Instead of coming up with something new. That's the problem, I think.
I think you hit it on the head when you said instead of referencing other movies for your inspiration, you're referencing Star Wars movies for your inspiration, and that's the problem. Because you can't help but just doing callback after callback after callback.
Do you think part of that is a result of the fanaticism of the fan base though? Like,
Yeah, I was going to say, it's
after
all just a big circle jerk.
Well, especially after everyone was so disappointed by the prequels. So I think what I loved about like I can't remember the name of the movie, but the first J.J. Abrams one,
No,
The Force Awakens.
yeah, the one I liked all those callbacks and kind of because that's what we all wanted to see, right? That's what we wanted to see in the prequels.
Kind of, yeah.
But okay, it's done. You know, you can go forward now.
Yeah.
Like you paid homage to the originals. You gave everybody what they wanted. Now you have the freedom to kind of go where you want with it. But it's again, like you say, you know.
Yeah,
it goes in
I didn't
circles.
mind that they tried to take chances in The Last Jedi. I just didn't like.
The chances they took.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not because they weren't what I wanted to see, or they were too far away from repeating Star Wars stuff. But it just they didn't work for me personally, and for a lot of fans. But it seems like now, because there was such a negative reaction, they went right back to the old way, and they're like, okay, we'll just do everything you like.
Yeah.
You know.
I know. Okay, look, we could talk about this all night, but unfortunately we're going to have to wrap it up. Let's just give one more thing. If Star Wars and Empire are 10 out of 10, which they are, what would you rate this movie out of 10? Again, it's like if I was talking about a marriage story with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, I'd give it a 10. This is not a drama. This is not, you know... This is not...
Scorsese, settle down.
Yeah, this is not real cinema. As a Star Wars movie, I give it a flawed 7 out of 10. Okay, what do you give?
Where
it?
are the prequels then? Are prequels 1 and 2s?
They could be. They could be. Yeah.
Or zeros?
Or zeros for
I
him.
don't know. I mean, just say the first 2 of this new group of movies, I would say were strong 8s. I would say this is like about a 6.
Okay.
Maybe lower.
I actually initially gave it a 6 preparing for my answer, and then I heard you give it a 7. I was like, oh shit. So I'm still at a 6.
Okay.
Ish.
I like Attack of the Clones. I don't know, like, you guys are salty. Old men over here being mad about General Grievous being the coolest thing I've ever seen as a 12-year-old girl. I don't know. Look, we've been talking for like an hour about how there's a lot of things we don't like about this movie. Still had a good time. It was still Star Wars.
Yeah.
It was still cool. It was still, the lightsaber fights were still cool. Chewie's still awesome. The banter was still funny. The droids are still cute. C-3PO's still funny somehow after the same shtick after 30 years. Like, I still liked it a lot. I don't know, maybe like a 7.5. It's definitely the weaker of the last 3, but also I'm gonna go see it again. Like,
So am I.
I like the new droid. It's cute.
Me too. I like the new droid.
I'd go between 6.5 and 7. It's rewatchable. To me, I'd rather watch this one again than The Last Jedi again.
What about Solo?
Probably tied. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, I wish we could keep talking. We could probably talk for 2.5 hours, just as long as the movie is, or longer. But
Our talk would probably be more interesting.
possibly, yeah.
Not as attractive though.
Yeah, I think J.J. Abrams did a decent job. I think he's a good director. They should have had a master plan going in. They didn't. I don't actually blame J.J. Abrams. I blame Disney for rushing the first film, which they did. No one talks about. They blame it all the directors. They don't blame it on the studio. But whatever, that's another thing. We'll talk about that another time. I just want to thank everyone for joining us. I'm sure we'll see you again for Star Wars Episode 10, because we know there's going to be another one. See you then. All right.
The rise of Palpatine.
Yeah, you're not gonna show off. Nobody's like, we've analyzed their attack, and there is a.
Well, the best part of that is whatever. What's the actor?
What?
Nothing.